Hello, my name is Victor Fizz. I'm from Parallels, and today I'll be presenting you this webinar about Citrix replacement technologies. Just to set a couple of things, please, if you have questions, please post them in the chat window, and we'll be addressing in the end of the session today. Also, this particular webinar will have a presentation and as well a session dedicated to demonstrate our technology, showing our brilliant mobile experience, different clients access using HTML5 or a native client. And in the end of the demonstration, we'll be showing you how it works behind the scenes. Parallels started originally in the Parallels desktop product or as Parallels desktop for Mac Business Edition as well, where we allow you to run natively Windows applications into Mac devices. And also we have Parallels Mac Management for SCCM, where we're managing Mac devices integrated with a plugin into Microsoft SCCM platform. But today we'll be speaking about remote application server, providing technology like what you see in Citrix, allowing users to access applications remotely without VPN, with good performance, printing, and other use case scenarios. Parallels has more than 5 million customers using our different technologies. Here are just a few examples from different verticals that we have our presence today. But our biggest focus today will be into remote application server. So if you haven't heard about us before, in a nutshell is a technology that we deliver any Windows applications or desktops to be delivered to end users using a client or no client, or using mobile devices technologies like Android devices and iOS. So pretty much when you have a Windows app or even a desktop, or even in some use cases remote PCs that you need to securely allow access from home, like an old Windows XP, for example, we can install agents and stream that securely and following your corporate security rules. We leverage Microsoft RDS, Remote Desktop Services, and RDSH to publish applications. And one big use case that we have been seeing frequently is, okay, great, I can do PC and Macs, but what about Chromebooks and Raspberry Pis? So in the past, we would say, okay, you could use our HTML5 client, but nowadays we have dedicated client for those technologies. So if you're in the education business, for example, where you see a lot of Chromebooks, you can push Parallels Remote Application Client and then have policies on how to connect, which farm, so students, for example, could leverage that. And in other spaces, Raspberry Pi is growing, so you can use Raspberry and have your applications delivered that way as well. And applications are not installed on local clients. And the whole processing, of course, is done on the server side. When we talk about the remote application server, a lot of people think about almost static applications like productivity tools and so on. But the industry is changing. So even if you have use cases where you have been hearing that I need to do voice over IP, or I can use Skype for business, this kind of use cases are supported now in most of our clients, especially in the mobile client side, and of course in the full client experience. When we talk about the technology itself, this particular chart looks a lot of information here, but what is very important here? The first one is the bottom, where we run on major hypervisors. So if you use VMware, if you use Hyper-V, Zen Server, we can use your existing infrastructure. But if you're starting to move towards the cloud using Azure and AWS, for example, we already have templates created for those technologies. And you can go to the marketplace and start deploying virtual machines from there. Basically, we can run on any hypervisor that you need, even KVM. But in KVM, we support today application publishing very, very well. When you install it, the idea is to be very easy to use. It comes with built-in printing and scanning capabilities. So if you use Citrix today and other third-party tools and you move to remote application server, you don't need those third-party tools anymore. We also work on thin clients and kiosk mode capability. So we can take over, for example, a Windows workstation and make it work as almost like a slave station, but Windows shell is replaced and the applications will be running from the remote application server for the user. It seems to be local. On the mobility side, we have the new mobile experience, different clients. So if you have employees on the road, they can log in into a portal very similar to what you would see in Storefront, but within the same browser you see during the demo, you can access your applications and even use printing with one click. So there's no PDF generation, download and opening a file, then print it. It's just click once and print. And when you deploy remote application server for a POC or for an implementation, you can have a basic working environment running in a couple of hours. So for a proof of concept, we can run everything in a single machine. For production, we can distribute the software packages in different, using different modules. But keep in mind, we also have one-touch deployment with wizards that can push our agents to your infrastructure. And when you have Citrix infrastructure, we can sit side by side while you do the migration. So it's great for test evaluation, seamlessly move to a new platform without impact to your end users. On the IT side, three things that we help a lot the IT groups. First one, it's comprehensive security. So we can data protection, we can do two-factor authentication, and at the same time, you can combine different rules-based user and location or where they are coming from, and then allowing them to access an application or not. On the scalability side, we have vertical and horizontal scalability. You can have multiple terminal server agents, you can have multiple publishing servers, or in Citrix terms, is controllers. And at the same time, you can add multiple gateways or distribute your traffic between one data center to another. And in new cases now, where you have your private data center or on-premise into cloud. So it's very, very flexible on how you use the scalability. It's more or less how do you design it for an user experience. And we're cloud ready. So we have customers already running on AWS and Azure, and they, in some cases, already use a hybrid approach where they are distributing the server infrastructure on the terminal server side, but it also fail over on the publishing side as well. In the brilliant user experience, this is a very cool thing. We do native touch gestures on mobile devices while working on Windows desktop applications. So we have the concept of using swipe, drag, magnifier, and even if you use an Android client, which magnifier only exists into iOS, we created one for Android. So it makes it easy also to click, select, and move things in the screen you're going to see in the demo in a much easier experience and almost error-free. And we provide a seamless user experience across all platforms. Our clients, they look all the same. And if you don't want to work on configuration and changing settings, you can always use our HTML5 portal. And from there, you can use HTML5 or just engage a client without changing any configuration in the backend or even creating any one. And by default, we do local peripheral redirection, which means local disks, USB devices, camera, and so on. Of course, using policies, you can have that restriction in place. In cloud readiness, I think I mentioned this point already, just to reinforce. If you have use cases on Amazon Web Services, Azure, and private cloud, or a combination or all of them, we support them already. And what is very important is you can either deploy the controller piece on-prem or in the cloud, vice versa, and you can decide in a very flexible way where do you want to run the components. If you want more information, we have a dedicated webcast recorded on Azure and AWS requirements where we show you different use cases like overflowing traffic or just having the entire infrastructure running on in the codes in the cloud. So the idea here is pretty much what you need to do or what you want to do on your use cases. On the scalability side, so IT administrators can manage demands on the peak steadily increasing workloads where we do instantly deploy pre-built VDI templates We leverage what we have in the hypervisor, so you can use our template management. In this case, we recommend you either use vCenter for that, and as well for Hyper-V using SCCVM module installed. That's the best way we can control the hypervisor and the template at the same time. But if you are small, you don't need to use Citrix PVS, for example. You can create new templates using the ESX server, and then once they are cloned, we can incorporate them automatically into our pool of virtual machines in the VDI space. So we can easily add new servers, gateways to scale the virtual infrastructure. So depending, locations and traffic and what your users do, we can add virtual machines. We do not have specific hardwares. So when we talk about gateways, which is controlling the traffic, terminal servers, where the applications are running, these are virtual machines. And from a high availability load balancer, which would be very similar to NetScaler, which Citrix has a different cost base for that, we already have a built-in load balancer, which is a Windows virtual machine. So pretty much our deployment is hardware free in terms of what you need. You can always use your hypervisor for that. On the security side, in the demo we show a little bit more, but the idea is granular permissions. So you can create groups, you can create application settings, you can set access based upon Active Directory rules and GPOs. On top of that, you can blend with two-factor authentication, which could be using Radius, SafeNet, and DeepNet, and we identify where the client is coming from or even the operating system they're coming from. So you can allow them to access apps or restrict access on that. In some use cases, depending the location or group that you create, you can allow disk access, USB redirection, scanning, and printing. So if users are working from home, for example, and you do not want them to use any USB device to copy files or even save locally, you can set that permission based upon that as well. And in some use cases, if you want, for example, use kiosk mode, we also disable print screen. So people, of course, they might take a picture, but we make a little bit more difficult for them to take screenshots, from private information and so on. How do we see ourselves between us and other vendors? In this case, could be Citrix. We're much easier to deploy, maintain, and manage. Keep in mind, if you have multiple versions of Windows operating systems, on the server side, you might need different Citrix servers, controllers, and storefront versions. We have the same controller, the same storefront, if you will, which is the gateway, and the same modules installed on all the same Windows versions. If you have all different versions of Windows you have, but using the same version of Parallels Remote Application Server. Keep in mind, we do not need to have multiple farms. Another interesting feature is we don't ask you to wait for feature packs to be released and then run Windows Update. You can run Windows Update to resolve security issues or security patches, and a remote application server will not be affected. So one farm for all of your Windows versions, and also keeping operating system updated. We're simple by design, so it's one UI. You do everything in the same UI. So you don't have to think about going to a web portal or going to the client settings. No, go to the console and you can change all your settings there. ROI, we can reduce your existing Citrix cost. We can, we have a couple of scenarios here, also comparing with VMware a product line, and we leverage and support Microsoft RDS and major hypervisors. So if you want to reduce the number of VDIs and use more application publishing, you can also reduce your operational cost and improve your TCO. So here's one example about the TCO part, where we have 1,000 concurrent users. How can we show savings on Horizon from VMware, and the same thing with Citrix. So each case is a case, so we can have a deeper discussion with your IT and business group and identify where are the savings and how can be implemented quickly. Keep in mind, depending on the use case, not only on the TCO, but the ROI can be achieved between 3 to 6 months. So the investment into remote application server, it's quickly absorbed based upon on replacement or even new projects on application publishing delivery. And what is very important now with Windows Server 2016 out, we are tested and certified to run on Windows Server 2016, all versions available, and you can use the same versions of Windows Server 2016, and it can be either on-premise and as well in the cloud. So no worries about that. In fact, part of the demo today will be running on Windows Server 2016. In the client side, this is showing how it used to be and how it's the new client. If you have ever heard about Parallels Access, allowing you to remote access PCs and Macs one-to-one relationship, we leveraged that technology and now we brought into remote application server. So I won't talk more about this particular topic because the demo will give you all of the details for that. On the Windows Server 2016, just a couple of more information about the support. We tested all of our modules. Here we call PA, which is the publishing agent. Citrix words or language is what we call the Citrix controller component. The gateway is where the portals are load balanced and running, and as well routing incoming traffic. Like if you're using only 443 or HTTPS access to remote application server infrastructure, that's part of the GW, or here as gateway. Hypervisor using the Microsoft Hyper-V, and our also agents have been tested into that platform as well. VDI agent and the terminal server or remote desktop server agents. What is very important in Windows Server 2016 and as well on the remote FX protocol, we're using these features, new features as well. So new compression and new controllers have been introduced, and we are leveraging those as well. But let's go a little bit more on details on the Citrix replacement side. So two big areas. First one we can help is cost, and the second one is complexity, right? So if you are stuck on older versions of Citrix and debating, oh my gosh, I need to install a new version of Citrix, redeploy everything, maybe I need to find something else that would make my job easier in the future. Our approach is very different than Citrix. You can update and upgrade production farms. Of course, you schedule maintenance windows, but when a new version of remote application server comes, you don't have to redeploy everything. You don't have to build a new farm. So this is a big point here that covers on the complexity side. So let me cover first cost, and then I'll get into more details on the complexity. So Citrix has very expensive license cost and is modular based. So depending on the tier that you are, the cost per user can be higher or lower. Our approach here is one single license and you can use everything. So you pay a subscription fee, or if you have in the SPLA business, the SPLA monthly user consumption, and you have access to all remote application server components. Second point from Citrix is they have very expensive recurring costs of maintenance and support. Citrix recently have changed their maintenance costs and support. They went up, so that will be a problem, big problem for you to maintain the infrastructure. Ours is significantly lower compared to Citrix, and if you're in the bigger tiers, even cheaper. And on the implementation side and maintenance, that's very difficult. A lot of use cases, Citrix convinced customers I need to use PVS to make my job easier, creating templates for VDI, but at the same time, every upgrade is very complicated. It's highly technically training resources needed all the time, and a simple maintenance can turn into a big job, specifically when we talk about upgrades and patching installation. So we do auto updates if you need on the client side and on the server side. At the same time, we make it easier for an existing IT administrator to deploy and manage remote application server. Majority, of stories that I can tell in comparison is there are a lot of small customers today using Parallels Remote Application Server where they don't have a dedicated Citrix administrator. It was too expensive for them. So we use our own, they use their own IT director or IT person that handles this Windows servers and email and so on to handle remote application servers, so they can be a shared resource. And management and administration in Citrix, as we know, is very complicated and hard to do. You need a lot of certifications and IT knowledge. We have wizards to simplify the process, and we can also provide training for administrator. Keep in mind, we provide a monthly certification training, which is free. You can just watch and then go for our certification process to become, a remote application service specialist. Complexity, we talk about some of those, about different access points, different licenses. It needs to have database resiliency. So you might think you have a high availability environment, but you also need to have a high availability database infrastructure in the backend. And upgrades can be very, very complex and very slow, moving from one version to another. So when we talk about Citrix replacement, 3 steps. We have install Parallels Remote Application Server in your farm, push the terminal server, the RDS clients, and publish the applications to the intended users. You can create groups, leveraging user groups from Active Directory. So automatically implemented the integration. And if you want to have more information, we have several case studies. I have 2 of them here where we replace Citrix, and the word simplicity comes across all the time. So we talk about easy to use, cost effectiveness, and the second one here we can see we solve the performance and connectivity problems, and very important things, it has been done in a matter of 5 to 10 days. It was not a project that took several months. With that being said, I think it's time for us to move to our technical demonstration. So let's connect to the iPad now and open the Parallels client and connect to the demo environment. Once connected, we can pick the applications that are pre-populated here by application groups or rows, and we will open Microsoft Excel on Windows Server 2016. Once the application is open, we will leverage the new features we have, it's in our magnifier, where we can identify pixel by pixel what you have in the app and use the function that you have in the app. In this case, the chart, make it bigger or smaller. I can pick a specific cell, for example, number 5, and then change the settings. So I can just tap and use the magnifier to select precisely and change dynamically the content. As you can see, the number 5 changing colors. And also, we can send this particular output to a printer. So let's say I want to send this to my printer, which is in my iPad, send to print, and we use the Parallels printer driver. The Parallels printer driver replaces the PDF export that you would have to export, download, open, and print. Here with one-click printing action, you're sending to your printer. Very, very simple. The same effect happens on the HTML5 client, which we'll be seeing in a couple of minutes. The second important component I want to showcase in the iOS experience and Android as well, it is the app launcher. And as you can see here, when you tap on the button that it's highlighted in red, we can see the application already open. Let's say now I open another Excel file, let's say my personal expenses, create, and when I launched the app launcher, now I can see both applications and I can toggle between one and another. But let's say I want to introduce another application, and in this case I want to open Word. Sharing the same desktop experience, I have Word now open, open a new blank document, say hi there, and the app launcher now is showing you the other application as well. And let's say I want to go back to my original Excel spreadsheet. Tap here and voila, the transition is very, very simple. I'm using an Apple keyboard, But if I want to leverage specific function keys, I can just close my keyboard here and use the native keyboard interaction. And I can use F keys, for example, or even arrows, or even home and page up, page down that you see in a normal keyboard. A lot of people think this is a regular iOS keyboard, but in reality, this is coming from our client interaction between user and the application itself. Another big aspect to show you here is if I want to use a full Windows 10 type of experience in my tablet. So I can go back to my app launcher and launch a virtual desktop. And we're in the process to launch the Windows 10 session here, where we can see a Windows 10 experience. And in this case, I think using the mouse would be easier for me. So I can click on the gear, use the mouse pointer, and now I can use a left and click feature buttons, as you can see here on the desktop. So I can, the same thing that I did before, open Microsoft Word, open an application and interact with that. Another interesting feature that we have here in the desktop, if it's click on the gear, you see that the microphone is open. We can use applications now with bidirectional audio. And if you have the use case of Skype for Business, this could be a use case for that. So let's disconnect and switch the demo now to the HTML5 client experience. So going back to my desktop, I can come here to my Chrome browser. And here I already logged in, but I can see the same look and feel on the application side. And if I double click on Microsoft Office and right click on Excel, I have now the option to either choose the client or the HTML5 client experience. HTML5 client does not require any software installed on your computer, which is great when you're traveling. So when the application is launched, I see the same application look and feel. I can open my DB in Business again. Let's use a read-only view. And one thing that I wanted to highlight, which is very important, is if you collect in file print, it does not generate PDF like in the mobile client. It will use the same Parallels printer driver, and now we will interact with the local printer that we have on my Mac. Here is the output in one-click printing as well. Another feature we have in the portal is here the task list or the task applications that you have. If you open more than one, you can switch between back and forth like a virtual desktop. So I maximize the app here, and I can click on the DNB again, switch back and forth. The X button is an actual X button that will be closing the app. Clicking on the X, it closes the app. Very seamless. Now, if I want to use richer experience like local disk access or even scanner or better compression because the connectivity is not so great, because the internet is not working great in the hotel, we can right click over here and use the Parallels client. And now we'll be connecting to my demo environment like I did before. And I carried my sessions from the iPad client to client because it's similar resolution. And here I can see my Excel and my Word document here. If I minimize, they will become icons on my desktop. And once I close them, they will be either saved or the information can be locally saved or saved on the cloud. It's up to the user or the administrator to decide. And the last part of this demonstration, I wanted to show a little bit more about the backend on the console side. We have done significant improvements in the farm level when we talk about publishing agents. Now we have the active publishing agents where you have more than two that can be acting as a production environment distributing the load. This resolves two problems. One of them is in the past we had a active passive load balancer on the publishing agent that was manually changed. Now it's automatic. And now we automatically distribute the load and performance between different publishing agents. So the publishing agents, they're talking to each other every X amount of seconds, and they are controlling independently and talking about who is connected, what applications they have. In case one of those publishing agents fails, hardware, VM is not available, run out of disk space, or whatever, the other publishing agents will automatically pick up the load and redistribute. So the users will not be disconnected. And if they get disconnected because of internet connectivity issues, they will be reconnected to the session that they have saved. The second piece that have been improved, which I showed you visually, the HTML5 gateway, is the ability now that you can determine what kind of experience the portal will act. So the first one is only HTML5, like we had in version 15.0. Only launching the Parallels client, which was a very specific feature of the web portal, which you do not have to use it anymore. You can use the HTML5 gateway only launching Parallels clients. Or what I already have showed you before, which is the Parallels client with the fallback feature. Again, it's important here, the gateways are now load balanced using our hub. And this information now it's configured here in the gateway payload and the SSL payload, where we add those different gateways and we are distributing gateway traffic automatically. On the policy side, very important features is related to printing. In the connection properties now, here in experience, we have the universal printing compression policy that works based upon connection speed, auto discovery, we're metering in real time, or you can change different settings between user groups or gateway access and so on. But we recommend customers now to use based on connection speed, and then we determine the best way to compress it. The same feature is now introduced into the universal scanning compression policies, so you can leverage that out and make it printing faster and more reliable, and scanning, of course. On the licensing side, now we introduced where we show you, for example, what is the account that you have the license activated. And for Splunk customers, you can use the same license key for multiple farms. And every day that information is handed over to Parallels My Account. We have a few YouTube videos showing how Parallels My Account works, but essentially we are taking a snapshot every day of peak and rolling that up to My Account. We resolve a big problem in the licensing count. Up to version 15, if you had two users, let's say user one connected, one from the iPad, another one from a PC, we used to consider that as two counts of concurrent user. In version 15.5, that has been resolved, and if you have two user ones connected from a Parallels remote application server perspective, it's only one license count. On the reporting side, we have improved the performance and the loading, where you can now see broader time frame of the reports. In this case, I'm showing you like the last 7 days of application usage. The loading process is much quicker. And here in the user activity, I actually put a much longer time frame showing from end of June all the way to today how the users have been accessed with active times, idle times, and disconnect times. So basically, we have done a lot of those improvements that are under the hood, but making sure the product is much more scalable and now reliable for larger environments.